Oh, no. No free land. I had the different grades of land here, and there was so much speculation. 1/4 of every grade was held out of use, and there we were, no free land. And because there was no free land, what happened to wages? Let's start with the least productive workers. What happens to the least productive workers in the free market without interventions when there's no free land?
They're forced down to the least they're willing to accept.
Right. And what are they willing to accept?
Basically, subsistence, ability to reproduce.
Clothing, shelter?
Yeah, ability to reproduce.
What happens to the superior workers that are highly educated and skilled? They have no free land either. Why don't their wages fall to a bare subsistence?
Because, well, for one thing, there's a pool of unemployed people waiting to take jobs. Now they can take the jobs if they don't have the skill. But more skilled workers will demand more, but within the category of their particular skill, there will be probably more people than there are jobs, which will again force wages down to the least that those skilled workers are willing to accept.
When will wages stop falling for those superior skilled workers?
When it reaches a point where they will say it's not worth work, I can't reproduce myself anymore.
Everybody with me? So when the supply of skilled, highly educated workers starts to decline, productivity falls. And so they're not going to let wages fall below that, because what happens to rent if the productivity falls? The rent would fall too, wouldn't it? So for the least productive workers, they would get hungry and not be able to produce as much. The skilled workers would not have the incentive to learn the skills and work harder and smarter. And of course we can see that as the demand for certain skills and knowledge increases, the competition among landowners who want to employ them pushes their wages up, and then the higher wages creates the incentive to learn the skills and accumulate the knowledge, and increases the supply and pushes it back, and then finally, at some point, it stops. And what about interest? When there's no free land, what happens to, and I'm saying, I need another word. The return to capital, that's what some people like. The return, but of course capital can be money too in common speech. The return to
capital goods.
Productive wealth.
Return to capital goods.
All right, the return to capital goods. I mean, every one of these terms that I keep grasping for can be ambiguous. Wealth, hey, there's no doubt of that. No, wealth is anything that has value in common speech, isn't it? So, but products that are used to produce more products. How low can the return to them be?
Subsistence, maintaining the capital.
Yeah, so they fall until, if they fell anymore, the supply of buildings, machines, inventory would fall, productivity would fall, and the rent would fall too. Okay, so if we're going to tax products, like the sales tax being a big one, but value-added taxes, excise taxes, luxury taxes, and so on, import taxes.
Sin taxes.
Sin taxes, yeah, another one, very good. If we tax the product at 25% across the board, then we would say 27 minus what has to go to labor and capital. If this is the average that has to be paid to wages and interest, and we would end up with 24. 24 minus 3, 21. 21 minus 3, 18. So
that's the ATCOR, right?
Pardon me?
All taxes come out of rent.
Yeah, where did I hear that before?
Mr. Gaffney.
And it's true, isn't it?
Yes, so.
Absolutely
Yeah.
true. And Gaffney calls it, let me think, ACTOR, all taxes come out of rent. But I like to say ACTOR, A-C-T-O-R, the all-consuming theory of rent. ACTOR. Either way, ACTOR is for the same taxes, But actor, I think, is like a, the all-consuming theory. All right, so if we, instead of sales tax, or all the taxes that confiscate the product, we go for an income tax. We leave the product alone. We wait until it's divided between wages and interest on one side and rent on the other. Well, if we had to pay out of everything that's produced 3 to get it produced to reward the wages and interest, and we're going to levy a tax of 25%. Now, of course, if you make minimum wage, you pay any income tax in reality today. And if you have a family, they give you money, right? Or an income tax credit. So it's the skilled and highly educated workers who pay is where the income tax starts, right? But if we just make it simple and say 25% away, well, now we got to pay 4, so that after that 25% is taken away, the workers and the capitalists still get $3 a day. And so, if we say 36 minus 4, we're down to 32. 32 minus 4 is 28. So, am I going slow enough? Too slow now. So,
tax rate is
and does the income tax tax land rent? Does the income tax take land rent?
Yeah.
Yeah, so landowners have to pay the income tax on their income. So we take another 25% from 32, it's 24, 28, 21, so, and that's where we end up. Exactly where we would have been if we had a sales tax, a national sales tax, and they share it with the states and local governments and so on. Again, all taxes come out of rent. And since the sales tax and wealth taxes and the income tax is confiscation of property, except in the case of land rent and other monopoly incomes, and it makes no distinction, we got to get rid of the income tax. But by doing it, we're no better off. Our wages are still at 3, even though we got rid of all taxes. God Almighty came, paved the roads, provided for national defense, and bore all the expenses of government, and now we're free as a libertarian, and there's really no benefit. Wow. So how many people have run, if I'm elected, I'll lower your taxes, we'll get rid of those terrible property taxes that are impoverishing and enslaving you. Taxes are terrible, government's too big, blah, blah, blah. Just goes on and on and on. And you can see, if they did get rid of it, if God Almighty took care of all the expenses of government, the workers and productive capitalists
would still not be better off. Would still not be better off.
Would still not be better off, yes. And these are, they cost a lot of money, but they don't do me much good. So it would still not be better off. Now, I struggled with this. I don't know, you may have a better answer to this, whether I should start with the product belonging to the producer, or whether equal rights to land should come first. And I've done it both ways, and somehow it seemed like I trapped myself in this in the beginning, and I just had to follow through with the product belongs to the producer. But I'm not confident that I shouldn't start with the land. Can you exist without land? And the answer is that a universal? So we would say all people must have equal rights to land, since you can't exist without it. What is the essence of slavery?
Not having
Now, go ahead.
Not having land.
Yeah, that's true. It is. I'm going to take it. Well, I was hoping to take it one step at a time. That is where I'm going. Let's take it one step at a time. What is the
working and not getting the fruit of your
not getting the fruit of your labor? Right. In other words, one person takes what another person produces by force.
Slavery is a human relationship between two parties, one of which is master and the other is the subservient.
One guy doesn't agree, right?
Yeah, one is subservient is the slave.
Right. All right.
It's a human
Now,
relationship.
what is the essence of private property and land?
Okay, so another-
Theft.
Absolutely. Same thing, isn't it? One guy takes what another person produces because they own the opportunity on which the other person is totally dependent for their existence. So what is the origin of land titles?
Conquest,
First of fraud.
violence.
Force.
Yeah.
Conquest.
Conquest, absolutely. And I just wondered, can't think of one country that exists today in which the inhabitants found the land uninhabited. Can you think of one?
Detroit, maybe.
Detroit. Oh, right. Well, if you don't count the Indians, I guess. What the guy who founded Detroit? How do the French say it? Detroit or something like that. Say it again. Detroit was the same guy who established Cadillac Mountain in Bar Harbor, Maine. You know where Cadillac Mountain is? It's the same guy, and he made up this coat of arms, which is the one they use on the Cadillac car, which is made up. Yeah, force and fraud. And I can't think of any country. I'm sure that in history there have been plenty of countries, but the people who discovered the place uninhabited don't live there now. They were always pushed out by somebody else. So, what is the justification for title to land?
God said it's.
God made the earth and the Dutch made Holland or something?
Well, they go to Locke, and the idea that if you work, that
God, Queen, and
can't
Country.
use.
God,
So,
this is your
what
land.
I'm thinking is that why do we have title to land at all? Why do we need it?
To prevent the trespassing. Basically.
Uh,
Enclose it.
But no, I mean seriously, you can have legal rights but not economic rent from that land.
Okay, you're getting close to what I'm getting at. In fact, that's exactly what I'm getting at, now that I think of it. So, why are we giving you legal rights to it? Why do we want to give you legal rights to it?
Well, so you can have right to produce on it and keep your
And
production.
keep your production. That's what I'm
Yeah.
pulling out of you. Everybody with me on that?
Yeah.
Is there any other justification for title to land? Absolutely none that I can think of. And when did title to land first appear?
ancient Rome, or maybe before,
Well,
maybe
I think
agricultural revolution.
I was going to say, I think ancient Rome, and remember, I'm not well read, but I know Progress and Property pretty well. And he claims that that's where absolute private property and land really was first established. But probably about 10,000 years ago, and it differs, like the American Indians were still farming communally and so on. But when the family becomes the individual unit within a society, sometime after agriculture, then you got to assign land so people can keep what they produce. And who would plant a crop, much less a house or a modern factory, if they couldn't put up a fence and lock the door? We got to have, in modern social organization, unless we're totally communalistic, that's a polite way of saying communism, right? You got to have title to land. Go ahead.
Can I just say something? Well, I could think of another justification for having a title to land, so that you want to protect it. Okay, you want to make sure that the land is protected, because what happens is
But nobody owns it.
yeah, if nobody owns it, everybody will try to exploit it,
Commons.
to destroy it, right?
Well, that's called
If you
our
assign it-
national park system,
Yeah.
right?
Well, but the state owns it. In that
Yeah,
case, there is a protector, right? There's somebody who is assigned to it.
I wasn't following you. Yes, I totally agree. Because I've known people who own a couple hundred acres, and they said, we only own this land to protect it from development and destruction of the natural environment.
Exactly.
the wilderness kind of
But
thing.
if you say everybody owns it, for example, you can come
And the Nature
raise it this way.
Conservancy
If you
owns
cut the trees,
Yeah.
thousands of acres.
And of course, in most cases around my way, again, the DuPont family, who now has like about 200, families that are descended from them, they give all kind of land away, surrounding their estates, tax-free, and maintaining the public taxpayers, and boy, it's a great view. I don't know, but I accept that. Sure.
I mean, that.
But and one could argue, and I should have said this. You could say, well, okay, but I'm not. I need this title so that I can keep what I produce on it. But I'm not. I don't have the title to exploit other people, just so I can keep what I produce on it. And then, of course, there must be somebody who is, right on the line there. They have no advantage over anybody else. They have no disadvantage, but that would be the rare example, wouldn't it?
It's also very interesting because there's a whole bunch of issues with how this really plays out in reality. Because if you have a factory on it, right, you have to employ people. So the employees, the factory workers, are not really getting what they produce on the land. It's really the landowner who's getting it. And this is
Right.
in the world of globalization. This is precisely what's happening.
And so that's what we're saying is not justified, right? It is exploiting people because you own land. The only thing that's justification, is that the producer gets to keep what she produces, not what her employees produce. Fair enough?
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you. All right, we ready for this? For David Ricardo, what's he noted for?
Is there anything,
Law of rent.
we need to discuss now?
The law of rent.
I'm done in an hour and a half.
And the rent of land is determined by the excess of its produce over that which the same application, and we type in there, of labor and capital, and secure from the least productive land in use. And what does Henry George say? How does he change that last thing?
Most productive land available without payment of rent.
Right, perfect. Now, of course, are they the same thing? Because nobody is going to use less productive land while superior land is free. Unless what? They're exactly the same thing unless what?
Unless there's none left.
There's no free land. Now, I would say it's still true that wages and interest are going to be equal to what labor and capital can produce where the land is free. But you can't say that the law of wages and interest are the flip side of rent, which is rent will be the excess over and above what can be produced on the least productive land. Because what we conclude is that wages and interest are equal to what can be produced on the free land, but when there ain't no free land, wages and interest fall to that bare minimum below which productivity would fall. And then rent would fall too. Not just like there's something magical about the least productive land in use. The reason it's still the same location is because if you can't, no inferior land will be used simply because you can't produce wages and interest on it. You can't get anybody to work on it because they would go hungry. They would not have the incentive. And we can think of examples of land that used to be productive and have people working on it, but it doesn't anymore. I remember when I did this class a few years ago here in New York, people claimed to me there was no land in the city of New York that had no value. I don't know. It's possible. I don't live here. I haven't studied it. But you can go to Philadelphia and you can square miles. I don't know how many square miles of land. The city of Philadelphia owns it because people didn't pay their taxes. Why didn't they pay their taxes? Because they were. Why would I throw money, good money after bad? You can't. If you built a house on it and rented it out, you wouldn't get as much as you would if you put that money in the bank. You would lose money on the deal. the land won't yield any rent, and it won't even yield wages and interest, and so
We're talking a bit.
nobody will invest in it. Now, somebody, if they have a house that doesn't have a leaky roof and all that, they'll keep renting it out until it needs a major repair, and then they say, whoa, excuse me, I'm not putting any money in there. This, I think, is one that I'm not 100% confident about that, but I'm 99%. You have an opinion, God?
No, I think that's true also.
You think what?
It's true. That's
It's true.
Yes, yes.
I thought it was true that it had no value, because we come back to this Garden of Eden, and I say, I'll sell you this, and I'll throw in the Brooklyn Bridge while I'm at it. But there's no title. I just take the money and I promise not to
Promise not to challenge me.
try and take it back from you or kill you or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I'm not promising that no one else will do it, and the government says, we don't care who, we got nothing to do with it. I figure it has no value. So, why are people willing to pay for the title of land?
So they can
Alan,
write-
you've been quiet. Come on, let's get
Well,
in
so they
here.
can keep, they keep what they produce.
Okay. Okay. That's a very good answer, but it wasn't the one I was thinking of.
Well, there's also the fact that they can collect rent.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of, but I mean, it works either way. But I guess in a way, we would say the moral basis of ownership is that you can keep what you produce. Why should I have to pay for my right to do it? But I agree, we do. So that's true. That is exactly why people buy land, so they can keep what they produce. And it's also
Yeah, it's really the rent.
so that they can take what other people produce. And I would say because it offers an advantage. That's what title to land gives you, right? An advantage. And Harry Pollard, we were talking about Mason and his ATCOR. Harry Pollard, who's an outspoken guy, he loves to say, the value of land is all the advantages minus the disadvantages. You probably heard it. Yeah. So I'm thinking, well, that is a good way to put it, isn't it? All the advantages minus the disadvantages. It's an imprecise way to communicate it, but it's basically the idea. And, of course, I already told you what I think the answer to this is. Fair enough? Now, here's one that seems to me that is powerful in class, because is there anybody who doesn't believe in equal opportunity?
On this room. What else would maybe?
Anybody? You say yes, no?
Yes,
give
of
us
course.
service
You have
to
to
it.
believe in equal
Well,
opportunity.
at least for themselves, huh?
Some are more equal than others.
Some are more equal than others, yeah. I guess that's why, like when I say, what is the moral basis of ownership? Do you have a right to keep what you produce? Oh, yeah. Does he have a right to keep what he produces? Oh, no. Then the consideration comes. And I guess it's exactly the same thing with opportunity. We all believe in equal opportunity for ourselves. And that's what makes it a principle. So I think when we
You can justify it if you are the owner of the means of production, which is basically what the capitalist system is based on.
Yeah, agreed. All right, so land is a common asset. Land is a common opportunity. That's basically our position. And while I know that most people would rather they own than control the opportunity, it's also one of those things that most people would agree we should have a common opportunity. And even if they're trying desperately to gain control of the opportunity, they still would stand in public and say, yes, that's right, we should have a common opportunity, an equal opportunity. So how could we grant undisturbed possession, yet satisfy everyone else's equal right to the same piece of land?
We could rent it to the people.
What do you say?
We could rent it to the people.
Hey, great idea. Great idea. We could make the title to land conditional upon the payment of its potential rent. What's the other way to say the potential rent? Yeah, the rental value. Ensure undisturbed possession, and yet satisfy all other equal rights to the same piece of land. And what would this be called? Or, yeah, that's probably right, but
A land user
the
fee.
single tax. Now, has anybody ever heard of the impo unit?
Yes, that's
Yes.
means single tax.
Single tax, right. Now, maybe you saw this. There was an email going around, and I've been under the impression forever that it was essentially what the physiocrats in France in the 17th century were advocating was a land value tax.
18th century.
I'm sorry. Yeah, 18th century. Henry Yours was 19th century. Thank you. But this article, and I don't know if you guys saw it, they were saying that ain't right. That what the physiocrats were advocating was a tax on the actual rent or produce of the land. I'm not sure if they said the produce of the land or the rent, but essentially it would have come out to taking part of what was produced in the land. And this would represent rent because it couldn't come out of wages and interest.
That's like an income tax.
Like the income tax is what this person said. I don't know who it was, but
Before they invented the term highest and best use and all that stuff. Before things became more urban.
Well, the point is, it wasn't the same as the single tax according to this guy, and I was wondering if any of you had seen that. I'm not one who gets involved in these endless discussions, other than when I come up here and Ron is the president. But I saw that and I thought, now that's interesting, because I thought it was the same. Apparently it was not. Nonetheless, it would probably be totally justified just the way a tax on rental income, income from land rent would be totally justified, but why wouldn't it work? Would anybody pay their rent and not use their land?
Well, no.
Land speculation would stop. Fair enough? And I just thought I'd throw in, do these pictures look familiar? I forget where this one is, but it's someplace I must have passed on the way from Penn Station to here more than once because
Around 20-something and 6.
I'm guessing it's 31st or 30th maybe or something, probably 7th Avenue or 8th, oh maybe 8th or 9th. 7 something like that. It's right there, 30. You can see the streets on it.
O'Reilly's Pub, O'Reilly's Pub,
Yeah, I
yes.
think that's 7.
But it's a great example of three buildings that are what 4 or 5 stories tall, and what clearly is a higher and best use. And this one here is on the corner. So
No for sale.
no, what?
No for sale.
Not for sale. No, I assume not. Go
I'm
ahead.
just curious, this is facts, or maybe Scott knows, but I noticed even when they build these high rises, there must be some zoning regulation that on the corner, you can only build a certain height. Even when they put a new building up, I noticed they never can go the full height at the corner.
As they do other places.
It may not be zoning, it may just be that frankly the taxes are such a disincentive to use the best use, that it's cheaper to build a little building like that than to fill up the space that obviously exists in the other building that you can build on into. Because there's an outline there, if you look at it, there's an outline of a previous building.
Now, I assumed when I came here in 2001 that these buildings, like this one, were old buildings, and that's the reason they were that high, is because that's how high they were when they were built. Of course, that one looks newer than the
That's
one
newer,
behind
yeah,
it.
that's what I'm
doesn't
saying, that one is probably newer, and they probably pay less tax per square foot than the big ones.
it? Okay.
So they got a
But
deal.
let's drop that subject for a second and look at this one. Now, you know that's a brand new building.
Yeah.
And if you look next door, it's about 5 times as high. You know damn well this is a placeholder that was built and Old Navy rented, I guess, but it's a placeholder.
And even more so, there's two of them.
Yeah. But of course, they could have been old buildings that were here from 17 or 1600 or something, who knows? But there is a familiar site at 28th and Park Avenue, right? And it's on the corner. You put there now. And,
50 million in front.
yeah, and I assume, I spelled that name or that word wrong, didn't I?
This
Supposed to be this. It said something different on the crane up there on the way up. But anyway, clearly, because of land speculation, they had to wait 50 years at least from the time that building that was there before got torn down, while they parked cars on it, until they got this. With a land value tax, by collecting the rent, no question about it, they would absolutely have to build whatever the highest and best use was within the zoning, etc., or they would be sorry they did, because they'd have to keep paying as though they had done it. And if we did develop things to its highest and best use, we could expect that on the roof of, go ahead.
You know, I described this to somebody, I went to a political symposium and I asked a question about land value tax, and later somebody in the audience came up to me and we talked. She said, well, shouldn't you tax the lower buildings at a lesser rate? Isn't that like a progressive tax? In other words, you're not charging the little buildings like the little people. You're not charging them as much as the big.
Oh! Well, we're not charging them at all, madam. We're just taxing the land.
Exactly. Well, I tried to point out it's not like a person. It's,
Yeah.
you know, but she said, well, then you're going to get all these big buildings. I said,
Yeah, well, that's the last thing we want is top.
That's more efficient use.
Yeah.
But she thought that was unfair.
Well, lately I've tried to say, well, you know, if we have these high-rise buildings in the cities, we can preserve the wilderness that we're so worried about. But still,
more cars.
sometimes it helps a little, but usually just when they have a mindset, you're not going to change it. So there's how we can provide some open space on the top of every building. We got a park. And I don't know if this picture, of course I got all this stuff on the internet, I don't know if this is what somebody like to build or someplace they actually have it. But the parking garage has parks on top of it. And I'm assuming these buildings would have parks on top of them. There's another shot. And so you have the cars parked in the basement. You got the offices in between, or apartments, and then you got a little park on the roof. So we make the most. And when we get the city fully developed, because we're really going to collect enough of the rent to do this, it seems to me that with every building built to its highest and best use, the ideal situation would be a checkerboard in which every other block is a park, so that everybody has a good view at either out of this side or, you know what I mean? That there's nobody who's just jammed with no windows, no view other than the streets. A couple of years ago, I did this, and a guy in the class, no, okay, they tried it, it won't work. They tried taxing land values, you know, I just feel like you say. Go ahead, John.
It works to have parks on top of the buildings.
Yeah, I think that they do have a few of them.
Where is it? Yeah, it works if they have parks on top of buildings. That works very well.
And it probably, they can do that without adding any stress to the building, because the park is light, much lighter than the building, you know, another floor. So they put that on top, and then whenever anybody has their lunch break or their coffee break, they go up for a walk in the park. And with collecting the rent, we expect that there's going to be the city over here, and then the industrial areas, and the residential areas, and the agricultural areas, and right on the edge of the agricultural areas, we'll have land that's free, and not that anybody would go out there in any sizable number, but the fact that it's there means nobody's going to work for you unless you offer them as much as you could produce working for yourself. At the edge of the community, not way out in the halfway up the mountains or on the edge of the desert. So workers and capital will go to better land, greater divisions of labor, economies of scale, economy in transportation and infrastructure, economy in the cost of public services because we've got people in more compact cooperation, full employment, and all this adds up to an increase in productivity. Now, when I say we're going to have free land out there, people go, oh, there's never going to be any free land again, get the hell out of here. So I say, all right, well, let's look at the map of the United States. There's what the map of the United States looks like. These dark green areas are probably mountains and uninhabited areas. It's dark, the darkest color here. 1 person per square mile. There's the cities, 5,000 people per square mile. What's New York got per square mile? 1 million people or something? No.
70.
What is there in Manhattan? 4 million people?
76,000.
76,000
Yeah, just look it up the other day.
in per square mile.
In Manhattan.
So that's 14 times this? 15 times what it requires for a red dot. And there's the red dots. So the vast majority of the people in the United States live and work on something like 3% of the land area. I don't know what percent that would be of the arable land, which is 20%. Well, 5 times 3, 15% of the land, right? Now, I said, well, what would the map look like if we doubled the size of each of those red dots? How much of the land would be left? Right? It would be insignificant when you're looking at the big picture. And so if urban areas, cities and suburbs doubled in population, they got to come from someplace. You know damn well there's going to be a whole lot of land out there that has no value. It's going to be right on the edge of the land that is being used. It's going to be our best defense against the destruction of the wilderness, and it's going to create this alternative place of employment. All other things being equal, is there any possibility that some potentially productive land would not be free? Are you with us on this, Sarah? At least she's honest.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm 100% convinced that it's quite possible. But
From this to this, we've doubled the urban and suburban population, which is 310 million people. Now we've doubled it.
What do you
Where
do?
are they going? No, I'm sorry.
What do you do about the Ted Turners out west who have 100,000 acres?
Oh, well, if they can afford it, and maybe he could afford 100,000 because he's a billionaire with all his radio and TV. Okay,
But
fine.
isn't he he's a land monopolist too?
Right, but he's still going to pay the rental value.
Yeah.
And if he's the only one who wants to use that land, it has no value. But as soon as 2 people, and 3 and whatever, want to use that land for some purpose, and he's going to be paying like a hell. We're going to be saying, hey, our kids are going to school and Ted Turner's paying that land rent, and we've got the best education we could possibly have.
We'll just split it up eventually.
And I think he might be able to get by with 100,000 instead of 500,000 acres. Well, how much did Ronald Reagan have? Well, he was terrible. And I don't think he was governor of California when Proposition 13 passed, but boy, he was a big beneficiary of it. So free land is reestablished. Now, in this one, I had 1/4 of every grade of land held for speculation. And then I said, all right, we're going to collect the rent of land and no boarding and I brought the frontier back to the point where I introduced land speculation several weeks ago. And there we're back to the subtraction equation. The land that will yield on average with labor and capital $16 a day. Therefore, what will wages be? Wages and interest. If I can go to the free land and produce $16 an hour by taking advantage of the natural opportunities that are freely available to everybody, what's the least I'm going to accept work for someone else? $16 a day, right? So now the advantage is 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, depending on the grade of land, and the government takes that which measures the advantage. Socially produced values belong to society. Now, of course, I know it's technically not 100% right to say socially produced values, because as soon as any two people start to cooperate, we get a socially produced value. But, you know, I could make it really complicated to get it technically right, but I think it's, for this intent and purpose, that's that. Socially created value. And if I try to make this somehow plausible between wages and interest, and I just pick these numbers that seem plausible, everybody gets everything they produce directly through their labor and everything they produce indirectly through their productive products. Capital, economic capital. And society gets the wealth that results from the advantage, from the superior advantage, the superior opportunity. Supposing that we now come along with new computers and super robotics, and we send everybody back to school, get a better education, we've got funding for our schools now and so on, and everybody becomes more productive through their skill and their level of education, their knowledge, and technology advances, and productivity doubles. So where it was 36, now it's 72, and so on. And supposing because of this increase in productivity, more land is needed, and I extend the frontier. So still, you can see on this thing, now on less productive, potentially productive land, $24 a day results. And so wages and interest go from 16 to 24. What will the rent be now on the very best land? Yeah, 72 minus 24 is 48. The government just takes all the rent.
I just missed it. Have we moved from 16 to 24?
Thank you.
I
Thank
just
you.
missed that.
Thank you. No, don't be sorry, because it gives me a chance to say it again. And I guarantee you, you didn't get it, 40% didn't get it. Did you get it, Ron?
More or less.
Nah, a little less, a little more, okay. All right, thank you. All right, I started with the 36,
Yes.
I doubled production.
Right.
Then I said, well, if we're going to double production, we're probably going to need more land.
Right.
Inventions, more productivity. So I extended the frontier one more block, and that pushed it down from, instead of it being 32, it went to 24. So then I said, okay, wages and interest are going to be 24 all the way along.
Yes.
They're going to go up from 16. And 72 minus 24.
Yeah.
Everybody, are you with me back there?
I just missed
But,
My mind is going blank, and my ears are failing me.
Gerardo.
Gerardo. Rivera.
TV guy.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mike,
Yeah, go ahead.
isn't on the well-produced 816 on the far right? That's really the margin. Is it in production?
Would anybody go work where their labor and capital produce 8, or in this case 16, if they could go here and get man free, that would yield 24?
It's not in use.
Oh, yeah, well, it depends if the land will take.
Now, if I move to frontier, of course,
M stands for the margin. That's the
the free land.
that's the land in use. But past that is not in use.
So then the 816 is really not in
That's
use.
potential.
Yeah, it's there and it's free, but nobody's gonna go there if they can go here and get something free.
Right, it's not actual.
And some of this 24 is in use. I mean, it's already been claimed that it's in use, but there's more of it that's still free for others. So it offers no advantage, right?
I would stay closer to the meridian instead of going to.
Yeah. And so would everybody else.
You want to earn as much as you can.
What's the axiom at play here?
Seeks to gratify his desire to the least.
Geraldo, what is the axiom at play here?
You satisfy with the
Well, there's two axioms that we go on, right? That man's desires are unlimited. We're never satisfied with what we have. We always want more. Either material or
Heretical
spiritual.
belief
And what's the other one?
the least amount of effort.
What is it? Somebody just said it.
Man seeks to gratify his desire to the least amount of effort.
Yeah, so that's why we're saying you would go here rather than there.
Same effort, more money.
Same effort, more wealth.
Well,
Is any transaction ever complete before the money is spent?
No.
No. I mean, does anybody, I mean, I often think of that international trade. I say, do the people in China take these dollars that they have and paper their walls with them because they like pictures of dead presidents? They have the money because they'll buy things. And they haven't really gotten anything until they spend the money.
You got it now. You got it, Mike.
Thanks.
Now you got it. Now you
Thank you.
understand.
Do I get a gold star this
You
time?
now you
Thank you.
understand when you get 5 gold stars.
Thank you very much. All right, so just to make it plausible, I said, supposing we broke this 24 in two and said, everybody gets $19 a day by taking advantage of the natural opportunities that are equally available to everyone, directly through their labor, and indirectly they get $5 a day for their capital. And 48, 42, we've got a lot of wealth out there that's going to go to society when society spends the money. And so everybody benefits as individuals with higher wages and higher return on their capital. And as denizens, why did I say that instead of citizens?
social programs.
Because you don't have, go ahead.
The social programs, for instance. It's
Okay.
more interesting.
Excellent. I was thinking, because if you don't have citizenship papers, you're still entitled to these programs. So it's not just for citizens, it's for all people who live here, right? And I think that we ought to really rethink our laws to say anybody who's good enough to work here and be exploited ought to automatically be a citizen. But we're not there yet. And the only thing, you can always find something worse. In Kuwait, if your parents weren't born there before 1925, you're not a citizen. So, not that bad, but, but it is pretty bad here in America. That you're good enough to be here, good enough to exploit you, get your, profit from your labor, but no, you can't vote, you can't. No. I say, they let you into the country, you're a citizen. Okay, rent we pay for the present budget, all the things. Of course, where would we save some money on the present budget? Like we had full employment and wages that were way above subsistence.
And all the social welfare programs.
Welfare, and welfare is becoming, I forget, didn't I the other day come up with some numbers,
19%.
Some enormous amount. It was way more than we're spending on the military when you add it all up.
I don't know about that.
So it was bizarre and getting bigger. Well, one of the things I was going to say a couple of minutes ago was when I was talking about the physiocrats. At the time the physiocrats were writing in France, and around the time of a little before Adam Smith wrote The Wealth of Nations, and a little before the U.S. seceded from England, before George Washington committed treason, which he clearly did. the French government was paying 50% of every dollar they took in, or whatever the franc they took in interest on the national debt. You probably knew that.
That was a big push for the French Revolution a few years later.
I guess maybe so, who knows? But after the revolution, were the landless peasants any better off?
Well, that's just the stupid before the revolution.
All right, so the present budget, which would still be necessary, if everybody's employed and everybody's got something to lose, like a house and so on, would there be as much crime? So we're spending a lot of money on keeping over 1 million people in prison, and certainly the land rent would fund
2 million.
2 million. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm living in the past, aren't I?
Rising quickly.
We have more prisoners than any other
What
country.
percent of
It
that is not
used
violent?
to be Russia and China, but we had them.
Yes.
I mean, after all, somebody's got to stand up for law and order. How about Social Security? What would be more logical than to support a thing which everybody's going to need, retirement, out of a socially created value, socially created fund? And when we have national health care, I was just thinking to myself, once I found out I was eligible for veterans benefits, I said, man, that could save me some money, but I wouldn't have the heart to get down and stand in line with guys who were missing an arm and all day. Nothing really wrong with me, and it still only cost me a couple $100 a month. I just couldn't bring myself to do it. But I was thinking to myself, you know, really, everybody who's a veteran gets Medicare. But what do they get? The Canadian system, don't they? So if it's such a bad system, why are we giving it to our veterans? So people we're supposed to be honoring, and then all the other people who are 65 and older, they just get Medicare. They go to a private doctor. Medical research, socially produced values. Seems like the perfect match. Not confiscating from citizens in order to produce a social program, but taking from the values that are created by society as a whole, and we cannot distinguish the efforts of any individual. We can't attribute to the efforts of any individual. What would make more sense? And how about developing better energy that doesn't contribute to not only pollution, but carbon emissions? Gee, do we need solar energy now? We were just talking at dinner. We're fighting over oil when oil is obsolete. Solar and wind are not renewable energy. They're inexhaustible energy, at least for 250 billion years is what they estimate the sun will last. And we're fighting over oil. And finally, how about a cash dividend? Now maybe initially there wouldn't quite be enough money for that and everything else, but we can see that as time goes on, certainly there will be as you saw the model develop. Yes, wages and interest keep going up, but the rent goes up faster. It's a natural phenomenon. And so some people would say, at infinity, we've gotten to socialism by natural stages. But 1 minute before we get there, where everything is at infinity, is produced socially and can't be attributed to the efforts of individuals, wages are still going up, interest rates are still going up. I can't think of any way that it would be better to help those who are less physically and mentally equal than a cash dividend. Not by confiscating wealth as we do now from people who work and produce, but by taking the socially produced values which can't be attributed to the efforts of individuals and corporations and sharing them equally with the rich and the poor, with the brilliant and the not so brilliant, the healthy and the unhealthy. Go ahead.
I just added to your list, transportation.
Oh, yeah.
And education,
So I remember when they built I-95. I think it went by our house around 1972. And the B&O Railroad had just torn up one of their tracks so they wouldn't have to pay taxes on it and maintain it. I thought, if you'd have just taken the B&O Railroad bed with its 2 tracks, and you'd run trains from Maine to Florida all day long, every day, for free, it'd have been a hell of a lot cheaper than building I-95, wouldn't it?
Yeah, tremendous boom to the economy.
And we could pay for a plane
Productivity
rent.
would increase.
Free. Yeah, well, you asked me why would,
Cost of living decrease.
why do so many people drive cars and they can take the train? Well, Amtrak cost me $150 to come up here and go back. And I can drive the car up here, even with the turnpike tolls, for about $25, like that.
Which doesn't count all the other costs that go
Right.
back to that.
Right, but yeah, I'm just saying, talking about
From the individual's
incentives.
point of view.
No wonder people drive their cars, because cars are subsidized with the
Totally
highways.
subsidized.
And the trains, I don't know, they must be subsidized too, but they're
Somebody should do a
outrageous.
real cost benefit analysis, cost per passenger mile, all the
Probably
costs.
they probably discontinued the trains when they saw your numbers. Instead of fixing the problem, they just say, oh, we don't need trains anymore.
Especially if they put in the externalities.
Oh, boy. But I mean, I think, there probably has not even been in the imagination anything that would be more economical per person per mile than a train. It runs on a steel track that has
Except for
a
a
minimal amount of friction.
Well, Europe has a pretty good rail
Yeah.
system. Europe.
And they're not free of it.
No, but it's
It
economic.
could be.
It works good.
I
Could be,
think
as
pretty
he
good
says.
is very relative to being not very good overall.
Well,
It might be a little better than.
What do they travel, about 300 miles an hour, something like that?
Well, some systems are better than the others.
Yeah.
But even at that, they could, as you say, be capable of that. Oh. All right. What is the other thing that George proposed? I mean, his proposition was pretty simple. Abolish all taxes, collect the potential rent of land, the full rental value of land, and what was the 2 other things that he wanted to do? It's very simple program.
Well, he brought us, he helped bring us the secret ballot.
Oh, yeah, but that's not part of his
Well, abolish taxes.
program. But although he was all for that and the initiative, and I've heard people say that a lot of the reason for California and these other states that have a citizens initiative, in other words, a referendum, was because of Henry George. So it was a secret ballot and the referendum. I don't know, if it's because of him that they got passed, but he was an advocate of it. The other thing he was an advocate of,
Free trade.
well, that too, yeah. And women's, he was a real feminist. Women should be allowed to vote. They're equal. But in his proposition here,
And taxes
and free trade incidentally would be part of abolishing all taxes, right? And collecting the rent. And so, but there's 2 more things. Oh, Anthony, there he is. All right, Anthony, go ahead and say it. What about businesses in which there cannot be competition? Businesses which are in their nature monopolies? Yes. So he wanted to socialize all businesses which are in their nature monopolies. Can you think, what would give some examples?
The trade system is pretty natural.
And in fact, he would even go so far as to say, we could socialize the tracks to let train companies compete the way trucking companies do on the government-owned monopoly of the tracks. Because the trains aren't a monopoly, but the tracks are, right? So that and the highways.
Like the virtual internet. The virtual.
The
The virtual
internet,
concept was
that is excellent. And I guess the biggest, what is it that makes the internet a monopoly?
Well, the frequency.
I'm thinking out loud here.
And the cables. Cables and
That's what I'm thinking of.
That's why I say the virtual internet.
Virtual.
Because actually there are monopolies. It's a real.
I mean, we have not problem, how should I say it? We have competition between Comcast and Verizon. Is that competition? Or is that a shared monopoly?
It's a shared monopoly.
Yeah, you know, when there's only two, you can't say it's competition. We have to have 27, or well, an unlimited number to compete. Okay, so roads, railroads, wires and pipes that run down the streets, that's pretty much what I'm thinking of. There might be some other things that would be natural monopolies in which we need them, and they are in their nature monopolies that can't reasonably be competition. And what did he say? Go ahead.
Sewage treatment, power,
Pardon me?
water supply, sewage.
Water supply, which comes through the pipes.
Pipes.
Now, this I'm free associating on here. Some people have said, well, you know, it's the pipes and the wires, it's not the content. Because you can put out, everybody can compete putting stuff into those pipes and wires. And like, I know probably a lot of places, you can get your electric from different companies because they just put so much into the system and then they can bill for that, people sign up for their thing and so on. But the pipes and the wires, and when they broke up the telephone companies, then it was kind of a joke because they had, instead of one national monopoly, they had 50 or maybe it was only 25 little monopolies, local phone companies, but they were all monopoly. They owned the wires, they controlled the wires.
Nobody else can do it.
Yeah. So it was a shared monopoly. And so what was the last final thing you wanted to do?
Do you include education?
No,
And,
I'm
you have health or
not
education?
sure. I'm gonna let Scott read it and Anthony help me here. What was his position on public education? But it was it a requirement or was it something that you might want, you could have it if you wanted to? I mean, was he adamant about public education? I mean, public education started in the 1850s, basically. It's been a long time ago. I kind of forget. I'm joking. But I think it was around 1850s, and he wrote in 1879, you know, so it was pretty new then. So I don't know, I don't remember him saying this, gotta have it, or we shouldn't have it, or anything about it, other than he accepted it as part of America. But what did he want to do besides socialize all businesses which were in their nature, he thought, monopolies?
We wanted to socialize the creation of money.
Okay, yeah, I didn't even have that in here. I knew I wouldn't get, I should have known I wouldn't get away from forgetting that. Yeah, he did want that. He wanted, but I don't think he was against private money as long as it was a commodity. Like gold and silver can be used for trade if you want, but if there's going to be money created, it should be created by the government. And he said backing it with gold was ridiculous to dig gold out of one hole and poke it down into another hole in Fort Knox, which is a waste of labor. On a free market, a country like the United States, we take about 33% if you count Social Security, and 25% if you don't, of what's produced. And we don't care if it's rent, wages, or interest. We just confiscate it, right? Sales taxes, income taxes fall equally on rent and wages and interest. And then we have quasi-socialist countries like Sweden,
I don't know
Denmark.
if they fall equally on.
Well, it's income. Doesn't unite the source. So like capital gains,
You have to
less.
prove that it falls equally on all three. But
Well, I mean, the way it's written, the concept is equal, and even if the reality is not. And then you have countries like Cuba, and I was trying to say, I think to myself, what other countries are like Cuba? Probably now there aren't any. I used to say China and the Soviet Union, right? Bolivia, all right, and maybe, and maybe not even Venezuela, but and certainly not Nicaragua, but there may be some other countries that take 2/3 of everything that's produced, based on just taking production rather than looking at the distribution. But
think so.
in a Georgia society, we would take all of the rent and we would not take wages or interest at all. And there's our man.